My home is here in Mississippi. I've lived in many other places: New York, LA, San Francisco, Chicago. But this place defines me.
Humbug. Got him when he was 4.5 months old. Undernourished, but he had attitude. Got a great walking gait. It's the smell of grass in the spring. Sound of birds. I just know I'm home. My parents lived right here on this land. And you can't understand me without understanding where I was created. Every religion has a creation story. So, what do those stories tell us about who we are and where we came from?
I'm setting out to discover where we began.
Jerusalem is conceived of as Eden, as paradise.
To unearth civilization's oldest roots.
This is the Mayan Bible.
This is the Maya Genesis story.
To locate the genesis of religion itself.
People are literally living with ancestors.
And I'll go back to the dawn of time.
Hindus do not believe in one creation. They say that these are cycles of creation.
To discover if science and religion can coexist.
The Big Bang is not creation because we don't know what was before the Big Bang.
There are billions of us on this planet. It's hard to believe we all came from one man and one woman, but we did. Who were they? When and where did they live? Jewish, Christian, and Muslim traditions trace us all back to Adam and Eve. The book of Genesis says they came from a place called Eden, near the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, somewhere in the ancient Near East. No one has yet found the location of the Garden of Eden, though many have tried. But why do we want to find it? Well, the reason is interesting. The Garden of Eden doesn't just represent the beginning of humanity. It is the beginning of our conversation with God. And finding out when and where that took place would tell us an awful lot about who we are. So, I'm off to Jerusalem. This is one of the oldest cities in the world. There's evidence of people living around here for more than 7,000 years. Today is the religious center of the Jewish world. It was here that Genesis was first written down, about 2,500 years ago. Archaeologist Jody Magnus is taking me to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where there is a little-known link to the Garden of Eden. So this is it. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Many Christians believe this is the site where Jesus was crucified and buried. But another ancient tradition says it's also the burial place of Adam.
The area that we're walking into here is underneath the rock of Golgotha, which is the rocky outcrop on which Christians believe Jesus was crucified. And this is called the Chapel of Adam. There's a tradition which goes way back in Christianity, which connects this spot to Adam, the first man. When Jesus was crucified on top of the rock above us, his blood flowed down through a crack in the rock, and Adam, the first man, lay buried underneath. And when Jesus' blood flowed onto Adam, Adam was then resurrected.
Almost 1,700 years ago, when Roman Emperor Constantine built the church, He also made a shrine around this crack in the rock of Golgotha, the Chapel of Adam.
But doesn't this contradict that section of the Bible that says that the Garden of Eden was located somewhere near the Euphrates and the
Tigris.
Tigris?
Well, the version of the story that ended up in the book of Genesis seems to place the Garden of Eden somewhere in Mesopotamia, which is the area of modern Iraq.
So how do you think the tradition of Adam gets to be here in Jerusalem?
Well, I think Adam probably does have a very special connection with Jerusalem. The Garden of Eden, or paradise, becomes conceptualized as a spot where the presence of God dwells. In early Judaism, in the time of Jesus, the presence of God dwelled in the temple on the Temple Mount, and hence Jerusalem was conceived of as Eden, as paradise.
So you're saying Eden could also be a metaphor?
Right, well, yes, of course, Adam was the first human. And in Hebrew, the word Adam, Adam, just means man. Human.
Hold up. You just said something now. The word just means man.
Yes.
Adam.
Yes. Also, the name Adam, if you take off the A and you just leave D-A-M, in Hebrew, dam, that means blood. Or if you add an A-H to the end, Adama means land.
Land
tradition.
itself, to blood.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Could the story of Adam and Eve's expulsion from the garden also have metaphorical meanings? Adam and Eve lived in a land of plenty. But when they ate the fruit of the forbidden tree, they were cast out and forced to work the land. In other words, they became the first farmers. I'm heading to a region where researchers are digging up some of humanity's oldest farming communities in central Turkey. I'm interested in finding out if the birth of farming and the birth of belief in God are connected. Could this have been Eden?
Amy?
Hello, come on over.
Archaeologist Amy Bogard has been digging with a team here at Çatalhöyük for 2 decades.
Welcome.
Thank you. So, Çatalhöyük, 9,000-year-old settlement. 9,000 years old.
Amazing, isn't it? So, at its maximum extent, it's 13 hectares. That would be like 20 football pitches in extent.
Mm-hmm. All right, NFL football pitches or soccer pitches?
I don't know. Probably soccer.
Okay, but they're all pretty much the same size.
You can see that these houses are densely crowded together. There isn't much space between them.
There was no space between them.
Yeah.
They had no windows or doors.
Every house would have its own entrance from above. Yes.
Çatalhöyük was a city with no streets. The people who lived here walked across town over the rooftops. Roofs were also where they worked. The people of Çatalhöyük were some of the world's first city dwellers. But I want to know whether they were also some of the first believers. Did they think their world was created by a god? Amy takes me to a house that may hold the answers.
What's the point of that red-rimmed hole that looks like very definite, has a definite reason?
It's a typical sort of feature that's found at Çatal, which is a niche for hiding things away. Like they cache obsidian, volcanic glass, because it's a valued, cutting material.
You don't find it everywhere.
Right.
The most important hiding places archaeologists have found at Çatalhöyük are beneath the sleeping areas.
Okay, so what are those holes over there?
Those are actually burial places. Those are burial pits. Where...
Oh, wait a minute. A human being is not going to fit in there. A baby, maybe.
The way they can fit mature adults in pits like that is to bind them up very, very, very tightly in a flex position, and the holes are periodically reopened and new individuals added through the lifetime of the house.
Wow.
People are buried under the platforms so that people are literally living with ancestors.
It sounds like this has some religious content.
I think you're right. And they start to raise questions about what you might call ritual practice, which seem to have been crucial for life in this community.
Could these burials be evidence of belief in God? Anthropologist Harvey Whitehouse is trying to get inside the heads of these early city dwellers.
So this is a pretty authentic mock-up of what a typical kind of house in Çatalhöyük would have looked like. These are the kinds of objects that we'd expect to find in one of those houses. Over here we've got examples of wall art. You know, here we've got bull heads. We often find these inserted into the walls. In one case I've seen them arranged almost like a sort of protective shield around one of these clean spaces. And we know that these clean spaces were used for sleeping on.
So, Harvey, you're an anthropologist. So you're more into what people are mentally into, right?
Well, my imagination runs riot in an environment like this because I've seen the kind of stuff that comes out of the walls and that they've been taking out of the floors. We know that there were very interesting rituals surrounding the burial of human remains, but those objects would be periodically, in many cases, brought out. What they were doing with them, we don't really know, but in many cases, they were put back very carefully and replaced. It's almost as if this isn't just a domestic dwelling, this is like a kind of living temple.
You use that word, temple.
Temple. Well, what is a temple, you know, if not a sort of an environment in which the ritual life of a community is conducted? And I think that's what is going on in these houses.
Here in Çatalhöyük, there were obviously all kinds of rituals, particularly burial rituals, but no sign of an organized religion. So the question remains unanswered for me. Did religion allow man to live together, grow food, or did civilization give rise to our belief in God?
While in Çatalhöyük, I heard about another excavation just a few hundred miles to the east that may hold the answer for me. It's an 11,000-year-old site that lies between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the biblical location of Eden.
Okay, we're now in enclosure D, the best preserved of the enclosures that we have here. So we've had radiocarbon data, and they've come back as 9,400 plus minus BC.
It's called Göbekli Tepe. And here, I may find evidence of the very first moments humans worshipped the divine. Stone Age architects built 20 monumental circles here made from large T-shaped pillars. Archaeologist Lee Clare leads the team trying to decipher its mysteries.
The two central pillars stand in the middle of a round oval building, and the wall surrounding it, at regular intervals we see smaller T-pillars.
Fearsome animals were carved into some of the pillars. But the stone's T-shapes may represent the human form. They could be men, or they could be gods.
If you look closely, if you have the top, the T is the head, and then we have on the side, the broad side, the arm coming down. You can see a belt buckle here. They could be mythological ancestors. Alternatively, they could be really the first deities, first gods that these people were possibly worshipping in this circular structure.
Lee and most archaeologists believe these stone circles were used for rituals, but no one appears to have actually lived here. The people of Göbekli Tepe were roaming hunter-gatherers. not settled farmers. So why did they build a permanent place of worship tied to one spot?
It's one of the main questions we ask ourselves at this site. So why did they come? Now the thing is, at this time the communities were growing larger and larger. There was more stress on the local resources, and because communities were growing, there was obviously a risk of conflict. People have problems keeping track of relationships, keeping track of networks.
The growing population meant that people who scarcely knew each other had to work together. That was the recipe for conflict. The religious rituals at Göbekli Tepe may have eased those conflicts. Possibly, for the first time in human history, people from different groups came together around shared beliefs. And in those first formative moments of religion, they may have shared stories about where they all came from. Stories that celebrated a shared past and drove them together to the future. Göbekli Tepe traces the birth of religious worship back more than 11,000 years. Long before there were Muslims, Christians, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, people came together to talk, eat, worship. It could be that the driving force behind our greatest achievement, civilization, was God. But today, we no longer share one story of creation. We live in a global society made up of many different cultures, and science has given us a new perspective on creation. It even claims to know the ultimate secret of our cosmic origins. Can science and religion agree on creation? The story of our creation has puzzled me ever since I was a boy. It began right here, in a church in Greenwood, Mississippi. I was about their age when it happened. I remember the minister reading from the book of Genesis.
There are 807,361 words in the Bible. It doesn't take 807,000 words for you to believe the Bible. It only takes 10 words. In the beginning, God created, are y'all gonna get with me? The heavens and the earth.
But for me, this beginning was a profound puzzle. One moment there was nothing, the next, everything.
You're looking good.
Trying to make it.
If God created the universe, who was around to create God? When I got older, I heard scientists had found evidence of the Big Bang. According to that theory, the entire universe burst out of a single point in an instant of fiery creation. Now that science knows so much about our cosmic origins, what place is there for religious belief in the beginning? I want to know about the Islamic story of creation, so I'm going to Cairo. One of the largest and oldest cities in the Muslim world. Islam has deep roots in science. Muslim astronomers were charting the heavens soon after the time of Muhammad.
Hadn't noticed that before. What is it?
This is the minaret of Al-Hussein Mosque.
Harvard historian of Islam Ahmed Ragab is taking me to one of Cairo's spiritual centers, the Al Hussein Mosque.
So they start by forming lines all facing Mecca. And the lines are all closed. You shouldn't have any kind of gaps.
Space between.
Yeah.
In other words, it's sort of toe to toe.
Muslims come here every day to give thanks to God for all that he creates. And afterwards, some head just around the corner to the 2.5-century-old El Fishawi coffee shop.
Speak to me about the Islamic concept of creation.
In Islam, the beginning of the story starts with this massive cloud of smoke, from which the heaven and earth are pulled from inside the smoke. And then the earth after that gets formed into what it looks like before the beings are created.
Interestingly, that is very cosmic.
Right.
You think right away about the clouds of dust in the cosmos that form worlds.
So this idea is about these massive clouds and things coming out of them is actually very powerful in a lot of mythological traditions around the world. And it is part of this Islamic narrative of creation.
In Islam, the moment of creation exists alongside the scientific view of Earth's formation. The same is true for traditions much older than Islam. Aboriginal people have lived in Central Australia for tens of thousands of years. They've told the story of this land's creation for as long as anyone can remember.
Oh, this is beautiful.
My grandfather's family have been caretakers for this place. You know, it's come passed down to me.
Warren Williams and the Arende people call this place home.
This place is so big you'd have to see it from space. You could probably see it on satellite images.
Yeah.
Cultural astronomer Dwayne Hamaker tries to connect Aboriginal creation stories to modern science. So Warren is taking him to where his ancestors say it all began. A bowl-shaped basin called Norala. It's traditional for the Arende to tell their creation story at night, when they can see their creators, the sky gods.
Big sky tonight. It's going to be really good tonight.
They're all coming out now.
Wow.
The story takes place in an era called the Dreaming, when the sky gods lived in the Milky Way.
The dreaming is a period of creation when everything was beginning, when the ladies were dancing at a ceremony, and one of them had a little baby in her arms. So she put the baby in a tana, it's a wooden cradle, but all the dancing started vibrating, shaking the Milky Way, and the tana fell down. And it fell to earth and created the crater, what we see now.
That's fascinating because, according to scientists, it was an asteroid or a comet that hit the ground, and what it did, the massive explosion created this big meteorite crater.
Dwayne wants to know more about the Turner, or cradle, that Warren and his ancestors see as the cause of their creation.
So you can see the Milky Way quite clearly, and that looks like that tournament from the front falling out of the Milky Way.
Yeah.
In Western astronomy, we call that Corona Australis. That constellation means the Southern Crown. But you're right, it looks exactly like Turner falling out of the Milky Way.
It looks like an upturned cradle.
At daybreak, Dwayne asked Warren to show him exactly where the Star Baby landed.
Goes right through here? Check it out.
It's right in the center of the meteor impact crater geologists called Goss's Bluff.
So this is it?
Yeah, this is where it began. The rocks fell down here to the ground and formed this. Then the first man got created. The first woman got created. And like now I'm here because of that. It started here. Just fell from the sky and made all this.
Science has never really considered some of these old creation stories to have any validity. And what we're finding out is that the creation story from the Aboriginal perspective and from the scientific perspective, like here at Norala, are identical. They're exactly the same.
For the Arende, life began here. And tradition requires a greeting to the ancestors whenever you enter this sacred space.
Hey! Sinino ko naman chilpa. Talaga mo niyo. Why did we go?
Science can live side by side with Aboriginal and Islamic accounts of our origins. Now I'm curious about science and the Judeo-Christian creation story. So I've come to Rome, where Michelangelo's breathtaking Sistine Chapel ceiling depicts the book of Genesis. In 6 days, God creates light, makes the sun and the moon, and creates man. I've come to speak with the Pope's chief science representative, Monsignor Marcelo Sanchez Sorondo.
Now, you are the Chancellor of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences.
Exactly.
When did that get started and why?
In 1603.
1603.
And 3, yes. And the leader of the first generation was Galileo. And the idea is to have a new academy to develop the scientific reason of things.
So we have the two different approaches to the idea of creation. There was the book of Genesis, and then there's the Big Bang.
The Big Bang is not creation, exactly, because we don't know what was before the Big Bang.
My question, exactly.
And for this reason, creation is nothing to do with the Big Bang. The other thing is that the idea of the Bible is not a scientific idea of creation.
In other words, science can't prove it or disprove it.
Exactly. We say in the Bible is the idea of creation, but in the theological sense of creation, not scientific sense of creation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Catholic Church no longer sees the book of Genesis as the literal description of creation. In fact, the first scientist to propose the Big Bang, Georges Lemaitre, was a priest and a member of the Pontifical Academy of Science. So how exactly does belief in God fit into modern cosmology?
So this incredibly high vaulted ceiling, just like reaching for heaven.
Yes, in a certain sense. It's a representation of heaven, of a theological heaven.
I'm meeting with Father Giuseppe Tanzellaniti, a scientist at the Vatican Observatory.
I'm very, very fascinated by you. You're an astronomer, and you are a holy man.
Yes, my field of study was radio galaxies, quasars, extragalactic objects. And it was another kind of heaven. I remember that when we take a galaxy spectra, I used to pray during the waiting for the spectra. and to say, God, I thank you for this marvelous universe that you gave us.
There must have come at some point a question for you about the nature of creation. We think that there's like a big schism between the biblical sense of creation and the other one is the scientific sense of the Big Bang, and it's all very different.
Creation, from a theological point of view, is perfectly compatible with the Big Bang, because you need always a first cause. God the Creator is outside space-time, is before any time. So the act of creation is an everlasting act, because creation is the way in which God continuously holds the universe.
For Giuseppe and others like him, cosmology not only allows room for divine creation, it offers new ways to understand God as the master of space and time.
I like what Father Giuseppe says about creation as a continuum, that it didn't begin and end with the Big Bang, that it is God's ongoing activity, which includes evolution. I think what he was saying is God does not exist outside space and time. God is space and time.
The idea that creation is ongoing sounds like a new one, but it's not. In the depths of the Guatemalan rainforest, lost cities reveal the endless creations of the ancient Maya. What if there was not one moment of creation, but many? I'm headed out to explore the remains of the ancient Mayan Empire, where a new discovery sheds light on their Genesis story. Few roads cut through the dense jungle of northern Guatemala today, but archaeologist Richard Hansen tells me that 2,000 years ago, this was one of the great cities of the world.
We like to think that Los Angeles and New York is being a modern city, but these guys had the same perspective in their own cities. Right.
Had water delivery systems, they had freeways.
Oh yeah, the very first freeway system in the world. Welcome to Mirador. This pyramid is one of the largest structures in the world in terms of volume. It's more than a half a mile long at the base.
At a site called El Mirador, Richard found the remains of an ancient city the Maya knew as the Snake Kingdom. It's such a rich archaeological site, he set up a permanent camp in the jungle to explore it.
This is the laboratory. This is our doctor. If you ever get in a problem, he can fix you right there. He's
Really?
an outstanding doctor.
I got this. Mucho gusto, señor.
Mucho gusto. Miguel.
Miguel. Okay.
Morgan Freeman, sí.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it was nice to meet me, wasn't it?
It was. It's very nice to meet you.
Set?
Okay, let's do it.
Richard is taking me to see something he's only just uncovered.
Okay, this is one of the most interesting excavations we have right now.
Oh my goodness.
This is art that was carved in stucco hundreds of years before Christ. And it has incredible scenes showing the entire pantheon of the Maya religion.
So what we're talking about is, this is the actual story of creation here. This is the Mayan Bible.
This is the Maya Genesis story, with all the deities that are needed to tell the story.
Yeah, this is unbelievable. I mean, if you just think about the fact that it wasn't done in the 15th century or the 16th century, it was done 2,000 years ago at least.
This is the oldest version of the Maya's sacred story of creation that's ever been found. The focus is on two swimmers carrying a severed head.
It's this head right here that gave us the clue who this might be at the first place. We think this is Hunahpu. This is the father of the hero twins. That starts the whole process of creation.
Gracias a Hao. Gracias al corazón del cielo. Gracias al corazón de la tierra. Gracias al corazón del agua.
Fragments of this creation story survive even to this day in a religious ritual in which I am privileged to take part.
Gracias al corazón del fuego.
The ritual recalls the saga of the corn god being tricked into going down to the underworld, where he's decapitated. His sons, known as the Hero Twins, set off to rescue him. But they can only get to the underworld by being burned to ash.
The ash represents the Hero Twins. She mixes the corn with the ashes, and that goes into the fire.
As their ash sinks into the subterranean waters, the Hero Twins regenerate. They return to Earth with the corn god's head and plant him in the ground. It is from this corn that the first Maya people are made.
Now the Hero Twins are in the river. So this is what they're going to be serving and passing around. In a sense, we all become a part of the Hero Twin story by doing this.
We don't perform rituals to celebrate Adam and Eve, but the Hero Twins were crucial to Mayan culture. Their story of death and rebirth was tied to the growth of their staple crop, corn, an act of creation that the Maya depended on every year. And, Richard tells me, their architecture also focused on creation. It mirrored a source of power they saw in the heavens. To show me how, he takes me 40 miles away to the ruins of the city of Tikal. The temples here are arranged in groups of 3, a triad.
So, Richard, now I can sense here that there is a pattern, but something's missing. What am I missing?
Well, there is a pattern, Morgan. This is a definite pattern here, and it's consistent through centuries of time. There's one big building over here with a stairway facing inward. Another building over here with a stairway facing inward.
Okay, and that third one, what?
The third one is right in front of us.
Oh.
There's the third structure. It's been dismantled, of course. It's gone now. But the big building was right in front of us. It was as high or higher, which was built to make the triad, 3 stones.
Richard and other experts believe this arrangement of stone temples is a deliberate echo of a triangle of stars in the constellation Orion. At the center of the 3 stars is a fiery nebula, a cosmic cloud of star creation.
You know from contemporary Maya that there is a celestial hearth, the end star of Orion. It's in the constellation of Orion.
Even today, when the Maya light a traditional fire, they begin by planting 3 stones. A fire of creation emanates from their center, just as it does with the triad of stars in Orion.
You're telling me that the Mayans got this triad, this manifestation of creation from the constellation Orion.
It looks like this is what they were looking at. We know that they were very aware of 3 primary stars. So the Maya were able to replicate that pattern with these 3 stones in these 3 structures, and that is replicated over and over and over again. They're tying us to the heavens. They're letting us see the creation symbolically.
Looking around here, I'm struck by the scale of what the Maya created. Huge cities, colossal pyramids. It was a civilization whose religion was focused on creation and the continued regeneration of creation. And yet, it all crumbled. Everything the Maya created collapsed.
It strikes me that we don't spend enough time celebrating the paths our ancestors trod to get here, or giving thanks for the forces that sustain our lives. But there is one culture that gives thanks for its creation every day. And I'm in Varanasi, India, to see it. India is home to 1 billion Hindus, the 3rd largest faith in the world. It has many gods and many creation stories. One of the best known centers around the river that gives them life, the Ganges, or Ganga.
Morgan, now we are at the river Ganga. Ganga, the holiest of the holy rivers and the center of Hindu universe. It only exists because it is the sacred, the pure, the holy from the heavens.
It only exists because
you believe.
You believe it's
yes.
true. I love that. Okay. Love that. I love that.
Historian Benda Paranjape takes me to a shrine to Ganga.
Careful.
Yes.
Ganga is not only a river, but a goddess.
So the idea is that you bow down even before you enter the shrine, but not for a short person like me. And then you come to a place where you see Mother Ganga.
What's she holding in her upper left hand?
She's holding a lotus. That is supposed to be a mark of purity.
Right.
Because lotus emerges out of mud, but it does not take any stains of mud.
In the beginning, Hindus believed Ganga flowed in the heavens, but she was held captive by the creator god Brahma. Then Brahma decided to send the river Ganga down to earth.
But there is one problem, that Ganga has got such mighty force, and if she comes on the earth will drown.
So the god Shiva blocked Ganga's fall, gathering her waters in the locks of his hair.
So Shiva just opened one lock of his hair and the Ganga flew. She's the mother because she gives birth to everything.
This holy river came from the river in heaven that we call the Milky Way.
They say that Milky Way actually is a reflection that you see in those waters which are still beyond.
Scientists have dated the universe to about 14 billion years, best we can figure. Hindus have it at what?
Hindus do not believe in one creation. They say that these are cycles of creation.
Okay.
And the primordial creation could be something like 8.6 billion years ago. Actually, this whole creation myth is very difficult to comprehend because we say that gods like Brahma has created the universe, but then they ask a question, who created Brahma?
Right.
And then
always a question. Then creation happened and then the gods happened.
they say that the sages, when they were in their trance, they got that revelation that how the creation happened. But since it is in that level of consciousness, you and me, we commoners, will not understand it. So we believe that it's beyond us.
The Hindu philosophy is not to try to solve the riddle of creation that happened long ago. It's to give thanks every day for the forces that allow us to be here and continue to sustain us, including the river Ganges.
You can come a little close. We are going to see the ritual, which they call it Aarti.
Aarti.
Yeah, it means showing the lamp to the god.
The Aarti has taken place on the banks of the Holy River every night for hundreds of years.
The prayer is that, God, you are like my father, you are like my mother. My whole existence is you.
My whole existence is
You. I'm just like a shadow
I'm a vessel.
that contains you.
I contain.
That's wonderful.
7 priests offer all the elements to Ganga: water, air, earth in the form of flowers, and the most important of all, light, which represents our souls. As the ceremony closes, people gather at the water's edge to place the light of their own souls in a tiny vessel.
This is our individual way of offering ourselves to the river, and a candle that takes our soul to the river.
It's the light of my soul.
My soul, and it says that you take it wherever you think is good for me.
The Hindu version of creation appeals to me. It says the gods weren't even around at the original creation. They have this great saying from the Rig Veda about the beginning. There was neither non-existence nor existence. It's saying the idea is beyond human definition, beyond human intellect. Just accept it.
Where did we come from? A man and a woman banished from paradise who began to work the land. Hero twins planting the corn they need to start a civilization. A great river that gives life to an entire people. These ideas about where we came from are the oldest stories we have. They are shared words and distant memories that form the glue of our civilization. We don't all share the same creation story. We all come from different places. But all of us, whatever we believe, can share in one thing: the wonder and gratitude that we are here at all.
It is my fervent hope that people will open their hearts and minds and see that our beliefs don't have to divide us. They have the power to unite us, to allow us together to achieve remarkable things. As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end.